My name is Margaret Penn, and at CCT, they call me chairman since 1992. I've had the privilege of serving during the periods where we had partnerships and on to where, as Virgin Islanders, we bought out the company and now own it 100%. When CCT was established, I think it was established at first as boat phone. At that time, the mobile phone was concentrated on being available on the boats for tourism communication. I remember back then, nobody would give their numbers out because you paid going and coming with your calls, and it wasn't that widely used. But as a group of local individuals in the BVI Investment Club, we were formed in '92 and were looking for a way to invest in our own country. The club was set up specifically to facilitate investments by BVI landers and belongers in the BVI economy. So when this was presented to us by one of our members, it was a perfect investment for us because it was something that was important in the economy in terms of the BVI growing, and as a utility essentially, perfect for a group investment as opposed to an individual investment.
The concept of the investment club is the grouping of individuals' talents, their knowledge, their contacts, their relationships, and then putting that all together so that we can engage in economic activity of significance. And it just so happened that Ulrich Correa had a relationship with a gentleman that worked for a company called Ameritech.
Helping you communicate, Ameritech.
We're people who bring you the best that technology offers.
Ameritech at the time was looking to sell this little company in the British Virgin Islands called CCT boat phone. I think all of us saw it as an emerging technology, as an emerging service, as a critical service, and we had an opportunity to buy this company. It's what you call a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
We were interested in buying the whole company. But of course, as a good investment, monopoly being one of the factors, there were others involved that were interested also. We were fortunate in that we had the support of the local government, Honorable Lavity Stout to be specific.
The then Honorable Lavity Stout, who was then Chief Minister, was a key player in the deciding who would actually be able to acquire this company. And I think as part of those negotiations, who popped up was some other larger players in the cellular industry, namely Henry Jarecki, Boston Communication, and Columbia Capital. Those three entities really had an interest in buying this little company called CCT Boat Phone. They were more financially capable than we were at the time. They had knowledge of the industry, and so to some degree, they had an advantage. But I think what happened in those negotiations is that the Honorable Lavity Stout, who had a vision for BVI participation, BVI landers' participation in the economy, basically said, they can buy it, but they had to join with us in buying it. Those were interesting negotiations because they offered us 20%. We didn't have to put up any money. They would just give us 20% to keep us quiet. But we had a philosophy in setting up the club that any investment that we own we had to be at least 50% owners. One of the things that we wanted to make sure, and it still exists today, that when we sit around anybody's table, owning anything, that we have a right to be at the table. We paid a fair price, and our voices had to be heard in a very particular way as owners, and not someone that was just put there as a favor. When we approached the government, because the license had to be transferred with the consent of the government, first of all, it also had to be transferred with the consent of Cable and Wireless, who had a right of first refusal to buy the company. And so in the Cable and Wireless scenario, Henry, Jarecki, and I actually went to London to negotiate with Cable and Wireless around the giving up of their rights to buy CCT Vodafone at the time. So Henry and I traveled to London to do those negotiations on behalf of the group. I was so much involved in the flavoring of the negotiations. One of the things that happened was this company, CCT Vodafone, had a loan with the Philadelphia National Commercial Bank. And the loan was, I think, was around $700,000. And they had a buyer who was willing to sell. And we went up to Philadelphia, and we negotiated that loan will go away for half of what was on the books. So we were able to negotiate for $350,000 to basically assume this loan. The other thing that happened, which was quite interesting, was we had to come up with our fair share of the price for CCT. And that meant we had to raise capital at that time.
There were 23 people that came together for that investment. And what happened is we each put up $1,000. And with that, we went to the bank for a loan. We dealt with the development bank it was at the time, and we were able to get the loan to purchase the company with the amounts that we had put up, of course. And that basically gave us our start in CCT, but also it gave the investment club their start in the economy.
Those were interesting negotiations. And if we're going to talk about the history, we have to big up the National Commercial Bank in the British Virgin Islands, who basically helped us with our investment into CCT Vodafone. I mention all of that because those negotiations, those discussions, I think put us around the table with our partners in a very good way. They understood that we brought substance, we brought value to the discussion, to the negotiations, to the direction of the company. And I think it was really good because we learned from them, being experts in the industry, and they learned from us and the value we brought by being local players in the marketplace. So it was a really good team to start off with CCT. In the early days, we were very much a monopoly, and the company did extremely well. I think after the first year of operating CCT, bringing on board the expertise of our partners in terms of how to manage, run, and operate a cellular company. Within the first year of operations, we were able to run the company successfully so that we can pay off all our debts within the first year. And so CCT became for us one of those investments that really set the foundation for the growth and development of the BVI Investment Club over the years.
After we purchased CCT, we would go to the various telecom shows. And I remember being to one show where, and this is many years ago, it's something we do now, but then it was mind-boggling because they showed this commercial with the person with the phone in their hand using, and they were booking a flight, speaking to their mother, and dealing with the bank all at the same time. And we're like, that's awesome, and it really, going to those shows really pointed out to us where the company could go and how we could develop. It's been a challenge because over time we've had to change the various systems that we use. At some point we had the CDMA, and some folks were pushing us to say, oh, that's the future. But in analyzing it, we understood that it wasn't, thank God. So we're fortunate in that the grouping of people, I would say the persons that were on the board and driving the investment really had the ability to sit down and discuss and analyze and really understand which way we should go. I would say that in the beginning, when we had partners in with us, it would have been a little bit more of a challenge. In the beginning days, we had partners that basically were out of the US, and as local investors, we were interested in making sure we could get dividends, and they were not, for tax reasons. So that was a bit of a challenge, which we were able to overcome and ensure that things would go the way we wanted it to. Another challenge would have been the deregulation process. That was a great challenge, and it's a real accomplishment to know that we have actually been able to navigate that and get to the point where we are now. Because some of the challenges that we had to face, the wrong decision could have put us out of business. Anticipating deregulation, CCT had tried to acquire as much spectrum as possible. And with deregulation, we were called upon to give up certain of the spectrum. In the end, we had to fight, not a fist fight, but lots of discussions in order to retain probably one of our most valuable spectrum, the 850 spectrum, because, well, others in the industry would have preferred that would have been something we gave up. And we absolutely refused. And that was one of the challenging times and one of the best decisions, I would say also.
At that time, Cable and Wireless was able to re-enter the market under the name of B-Mobile. So now you had CCT and B-Mobile in the country. A study done by a group for the TRC stated that only 2 cellular phone companies should be given license, because outside of that, it's going to be very difficult for 3 or 4 cellular companies to compete in the small market. So we went along with that, and then Digicel entered the market, despite the studies saying that it was not going to happen.
CCT needed to make certain investments in the company in order to survive, and our 50% partner was not 100% on board with us. I think it was Dr. Vanterpool and Romney Penn. They said, we need 10 good men to put up this amount of money each so we can swing this deal. We didn't get any takers. So we ended up with 2 good men and 2 good women.
There was a point at which the TGM Group and the investment club now owned CCT, but because of the entrance of the other 2 companies who gobbled up major shares of the market, the value of CCT went down very dramatically. We bought it, but at that time, after buying in, there was a major loss. So here we were sitting, the whole company crashed. I am already in, but my investment is basically gone. everybody felt that this was the end of CCT now, so B-Mobile and Digicel jumped on the market and created a big stir, and customers started moving across to the other two companies. They had no choice.
CCT was on its back, and we literally shut down for a couple of days. I could never forget the day that some of the directors huddled in Ashley Ritter's building in the basement, and we said a prayer. And we believed God that He would see CCT through. And it happened. It seemed impractical and improbable that a company on its back with Flow and cable and wireless and Digicel and all of those companies up and running and with the capital that we would even get back to where we are today.
Ooh, when Mr. Penn entered the pictures, at the time it was basically a low period in CCT's life. We were transitioning. We had a really bad technical hiccup, and then we came back. But Mr. Penn came in at a very low period in CCT's life.
My name is Avrad Penn. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Caribbean Cellular Telephone, and I've been here pretty much since the transition to the new ownership, which was April of 2013. I didn't really assume the role of CEO till probably later on down that year, but what happened was essentially when the transition to the new ownership came, CCT, Caribbean Cellular Telephone, had a lot of economic problems at the time, and my background from previous career was in consulting. So I essentially came in to do a financial assessment of the company and kind of see what we can do to make changes and move forward, and I never really escaped, and I've been here ever since. When I came to CCT was effectively bankrupt. There's really no nice way to put it. If there were bankruptcy laws in the British Virgin Islands where you could have restructured your debt and assumed bankruptcy and then come out as a whole company afterward, we probably would have tried to pursue that. They had a major outage, and that caused pretty significant problems because one, there was the cost of the outage and trying to find equipment and so on to repair the network that they had. But also the company was actually forced for a short period of time to roam locally on our competitors. And they weren't exactly friendly in terms of the rate which they charged. So when I came into the company, they were dealing not only with the economic ramifications of the company having gone down for years in a row, but that coupled with the outage created an immediate need because they had that cost of having to roam locally on their two competitors. The mistake that I think was made by the previous management of CCT, and I don't like to really pick on previous management, but from my perspective was there wasn't really the same impetus that we have today to continually reinvest in the company. So they were ahead of the technology, they were doing well, and then as the technology changes in telecommunications, technology is always changing. They didn't continue to invest in the network and to invest in the new technologies. So they got to a point where they had old technology, and the technology was so old that when they had a problem, they had trouble even finding equipment to repair the network. I essentially had to cut down CCT to kind of its bare bones and figure out what do we really need to operate on a day-to-day basis. Who is the most critical people? What are the most critical functions we have? And cut down to that and then start rebuilding, because we had to do a huge investment in the network and a huge investment in the company. I decided really early, I mean, it's not just my decision, but I guess I'm the one who implemented it, that one of the most important things for us was to make sure that we had the acumen on staff to really push ourselves forward. And you had to go back and really sit and say, okay, how is this company going to move on going forward? I did a lot of research when I started on, looking at who are the best in class telecommunications operators and how do they operate. So wherever there was a company that had public information, the AT&Ts and the Verizons of the world, I spent a lot of time poring over their financials to try to understand how they structured the business, how much did they reinvest in the business each year, so on and so on, so we could figure out what that reinvestment rate and get a better understanding of what our profit margin should be. What should be the percentage that we spend on cost of goods? What should be the percentage we spend on expenses? And so we could come up with what this company should be making and also how much should be reinvested. Because I think those principles, those broad kind of benchmarks, should make sense regardless of how big or small a company is. So by doing that and kind of restructuring that way, we found ourselves into a more practical budget, which included progressing the company. And that, I think, was really the secret sauce in terms of trying to understand how we move forward from a situation where we were struggling to a situation where we're now thriving and doing well 13 years later.
And a lot of people thought that that was the end of the company. I was actually thinking that way at some point, but then when I saw us bounce back, I said, man, we could handle anything, because now we have gone from being in the gutter to basically being almost on the mountaintop.
We got the company back up. I mean, we got the cellular services back up and running, but it was running on a thread and on old equipment, obsolete equipment. And so we had to go out and find some new vendors to sell us the latest and the newest equipment. It was then that we went to a major telecom conference in Las Vegas, and we met a company called ZTE. We literally signed the contract with ZTE on a poker table in a casino in Las Vegas, realizing that I don't gamble. I'd never been in a casino in my life before. We signed that deal on a poker table. I think that was symbolic of the risk that we were taking.
At the time, we had a 2G network. Best in class was a 3G network, so we were behind the technology. And then in the developed world, they were already moving on to a 4G network. So we made the decision at that time and say, hey, we're gonna do 3G and 4G one time. So we're gonna invest, we're gonna go from our 2G network, and we're not gonna just go to 3G, we're gonna go to 4G, so we're gonna go in front of where the market was within the BVI. So that took a huge investment. So that was 2013. 2014 is where we launched that network. And so we lost money in 2013. By 2014, we broke even. In 2015, we started to be in the black again and be a profitable company again.
CCT was able to launch itself and become, even to leapfrog over what Digicel and B-Mobile were able to offer at that time.
Emancipate yourself from mobile slavery with freedom one plan from CCT.
Despite all the challenges that we've faced, we have a very loyal customer base that has stayed with us through thick and thin. We know what the complaints have been. We have heard those complaints, and we've made an investment in both time and money to deal with those complaints and to bring people the network that they deserve and that they desire.
The new CCT concept store, as you see here today, boasts a number of improved features, including LED TV displays, an experience bar, a kids exploration table, plus LED lighting and all natural wood adds to an all new environmentally friendly space. However, the greatest feature is CCT's team of dedicated employees helping customers in every engagement channel, including live here in the store, live via our customer service center, which is located here on my left, and of course, our social media platforms.
We're not afraid of competition. It causes everyone to sharpen their sword and bring a better product to the market. One of the things that I always try to tell people about CCT is we've come to believe that competition is somehow a bad thing. Competition is not a bad thing. We don't have any problem with competing, and we intend to compete. We're not going to be shy about it. And that's one of the big things that we want to bring to the market.
Yeah, I remember my first day. It was in Tortola. It was at the Mill Mall. And the first day was a little scary because, you have to travel by boat to go to work from Virgin Gorda to Tortola. And I didn't know any of the people that I was going to work with. But it was fairly nice in the end. The people were well receiving and we were off to a good start. In the early days, for me, the biggest challenge was actually getting to work, because leaving Virgin Gorda, I had to traverse by boat and then either walk across to the Mill Mall or take a taxi. It was the opening of our store in Virgin Gorda, because that was a big event. I think it was one of the biggest CCT ever had. We had modelings, we had bands, we had food, we had giveaways, and it was really exciting. That was one of the biggest things for me.
We just opened our new flagship store here in the Virgin Gorda Yacht Harbor.
Yes.
And the customers are loving it so far. They like the new layout, the new colors, it's just nice and bright and they're liking it a lot. So everything you can do in Tortola, you can do the same thing here. Pay your bills, top up, activate new plans, everything, we do it here.
This is all before the 2017 storms. We had already stabilized the company and we were moving in the right direction. We're actually doing pretty well right before the storm.